Cool. Alrighty, well, we are two past, so we will jump in. I always start any webinar that I do with a disclaimer that I like to pack a lot of information into a short amount of time. I can be pretty guilty of talking really fast. So if I am going too fast, just let me know in the chat and I will try to slow down. But with that in mind, we do have a lot to cover today. The whole purpose of this session, this is a monthly series, is to introduce as many people to the world of climate jobs as possible. That being said, this is a baseline. We are trying to start from the bottom in this session to give everyone that baseline knowledge about climate careers. So if you've attended any of my sessions in the past or attended any other climate career sessions, this may seem like a bit of a refresher. Perfectly okay. It is always great to have a refresher, but just keep that in mind that this is an intro to climate jobs, and we do deeper dives in future sessions. The format for today's session is going to be a 50 or so minute presentation from me, and then I will save the last 10 or so minutes for questions at the end. So save those questions for the end just so they don't get lost in the chat. I do have to click admit on every person that enters the waiting room. So if you see me looking over to the right, I'm looking for people to make sure they're not in the waiting room. So with that, hi, we have not met before. My name is Natalie Lavery. I head up marketing and content at Climate People. I'll get into who Climate People is in 1 minute. Just wanted to give a quick background on myself as to why I'm here talking to you all today. Started my career in grassroots environmental advocacy, working for Greenpeace and the Sierra Club, and really loved having a climate impact through my job. But boots on the ground campaigning was just not the best use of my skill set. So ended up leaving, got a job at a more traditional tech company, and for the first time loved the work that I was doing, but had a really hard time staying motivated when I, quite frankly, didn't care about the greater impact of that work. So was job searching and came across Climate People, who is a climate technology recruitment agency, and kind of opened my eyes to the world of climate tech and how there's a demand for people of all skill sets in this space. So started having conversations with Brendan, Climate People's founder, and ended up creating my own job. And here I am nearly 4 years later. So super exciting to know that there are opportunities for people in climate who are outside of that traditional scientific or environmental degree types. And then two, there's so many opportunities to networking your way into jobs in this space. And it's all about being strategic and ultimately setting up the best job search tactics to get a job in climate. And that is what we are going to focus on a lot today. So I'll touch on this quickly because we've already covered it. But like I said, Climate People is a climate technology recruitment and advisory firm. Essentially, we operate like any traditional recruitment agency would. However, we only work with companies that are working on climate solutions. And of course, the other half of that is working with job seekers, many like yourselves who are interested in getting a job in climate and hopefully pairing those two together to mobilize this workforce transition to get more people working in this space. We are a small team. We're a team of three. So at any given time, we likely only have a maximum of 15 jobs posted, and we want to get way more than that jobs in this space. So this is really where my job comes in, and why all of you are here today is really hosting a lot of resources, a lot of events to give all of you the tools so that you can get a job in this space, even if it's not necessarily through one of our jobs postings. So thank you for being here today, and thank you for doing everything in your power to get a job in this space, because we really do need you. This stat right here is the foundation for today's entire discussion. If you have not heard of Terra.do, they're a climate education platform, and I would highly recommend checking them out. But they say that by 2030, we need 100 million people working in climate to address the demands of the climate crisis. So that means that 99% of the people who will be working in climate by the end of this decade have not yet begun. So I put this slide in here to really paint the picture for where climate and climate careers are going to go. If you're job searching right now, I know that this stat doesn't feel right. It's really hard to get a job right now. We are in an employer centric market, and we'll expand on this a little bit more in a few slides. But again, wanted to start with this little dose of optimism of you are in the right place, even if it seems like it's hard to get a job, because it is, it's nothing that you're doing. There is going to be opportunity for you. It's more about being intentional about your approach and really leading with a networking centric approach to your job search, which is something that we are going to focus on a lot today. So, assuming that, again, this is a baseline presentation, really just trying to teach all of you about climate careers and the opportunity that's in this space. I want to start with what even is climate tech? I know it's kind of a buzzword that's thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean? So there are a lot of definitions of climate tech out there, but at Climate People, we define it as a technological service. So that can be a software, a web-based tool, a physical, a satellite, any technological service that is eliminating, removing, or reducing the harms of carbon emissions is considered a climate tech product. And those climate tech products can fit into these three categories in bold: emissions reduction, climate adaptation, and carbon removal. So emissions reduction is essentially, as it sounds, any technology that is reducing emissions. So that's your electric vehicles, that's your solar panels, your wind turbines, etc. Then we have climate adaptation, which essentially says the effects of climate change are already here. How can we be resilient in the face of these effects? So that is your fireproofing, your floodproofing, your drones that can map out wildfires, all of those different services. And then lastly, again, as it sounds, is carbon removal. This is any technology that is actively removing carbon from the air. So your carbon captures, your carbon storages and utilizations, and so on and so forth. So again, any climate technology is a technology that is essentially reducing the harms of climate change. How does this kind of work? So when we think of climate tech and the climate tech landscape, we really need to think of it as a reframing of the entire global economy. So to get to that 100 million jobs that we outlined from Terra.do, we need to rework the way that we're doing everything. So we think of the way a traditional economy operates. We have industry, we have transportation, we have food, we have buildings, so on and so forth. If we were to view these innovations from a climate lens, that means that we need to rework these traditional frameworks. So, for example, in a traditional society in the United States, transportation looks a lot like single car vehicles, lots of room for parking wherever you go, that kind of thing. However, if we were to view transportation from a climate lens, that would look like public transportation, that would look like electric vehicles, battery innovation, and so on and so forth. So again, climate technology isn't this niche little subsector of the economy. It's a reframing of the entire global economy. Why are we doing this? I am assuming a lot of you already know this since you're here and you care about these issues, but CO2 levels are the highest that we have seen in human history. And at this rate, we have less than 10 years before we experience the even greater catastrophic effects of climate change. So we know things are dire, but didn't put this slide in here to scare you. I put it in here to do the opposite, to really paint the demand for why you are needed in this space. The fate of our future depends on the actions that we're going to take in this coming decade. And in order to scale these solutions, we need people, we need jobs. So again, going back to that 100 million stat, we need you and you are in the right place. And again, we think of job security, we often think of product market fit, and we think of demand. And as unfortunate as it is, as climate change continues to worsen, that product market fit and that demand continues to spike, which equates to good jobs and more good jobs. So what we've been talking a lot with climate technology is a lot of startups. Climate tech is a very heavy startup landscape, which is great. But a lot of people care about these issues, but they work at an enterprise non-climate company and they still want to make an impact. Put this slide in here to show that you can still get a climate job. You can still make your job a climate job without leaving your current role. So, as we know, for better or for worse, corporations have a lot of power. So, if we have internal stakeholders in these positions and they can leverage that power for climate action, that is incredible. So, again, if you don't want to leave your job, you don't have to leave your job. You can really focus on making your job more climate oriented. If you've never heard of Project Drawdown, I would highly recommend checking them out. They have a ton of resources on this, making your job a climate job. Cool. But say you want to leave your job, you want to find a job at a climate startup, you really just want to work on a solution that is dedicated to climate solutions. That's totally okay too. These are some great resources here on where to find climate jobs. I'll share this recording and this slide deck out after the fact. I'll send an email, so no need to write this all down now. But these are some of the biggest climate job boards out there where you can really start looking for jobs. There's Climate Tech List, there's Green Jobs Board, Brown Girl Green, Climate Base, a little biased, but Climate People, and so on and so forth. So again, great starting point if you want to look on where to find a job. So we talked about this earlier, but as I said, when I was talking about the 100 million jobs and how that stat is really meant to be exciting for people of there's so much opportunity. However, if you are currently looking for a job, and I know better than anyone that the job market right now is not great. It's hard to find a job, and you hear the stat of there's 100 million jobs. It can kind of feel like a bit of a slap in the face of there's 100 million jobs, but I can't find one. And really just wanted to let you know that again, it is a weird market right now. We are in an employer centric market. Any job that we post, that climate people post, we're seeing an average of 650 applications per job. So again, it is nothing that you are doing wrong. The key to navigating an employer centric market is finding ways to stand out. So if you apply to a job alongside 650 other people, it's really hard to get noticed. And that's not necessarily anything that you're doing. It's purely the fact that founders are overwhelmed. A lot of times, as we talked about, these startups are small teams. They are hiring because their capacity is already limited. And then when they see 600 plus applications flood in, they don't have the capacity to go through those applications. A lot of our clients will hire us to help them find people despite the job never being posted. So again, how can you stand out? How can you be on these founders' radars alongside applying for jobs? How can you go the extra mile? What else can you do? And this is where networking comes in. If we've met before, if you've attended any of my other sessions, I talk about networking a lot because it is truly the best way to stand out. It is one of the easiest ways to stand out from those 650 other applications. And as I talked about this, more than half of our clients will hire climate people. They will give us a job description and they'll tell us exactly who they're looking for. However, they'll never post the job and they will rely on us to reach out to people to find them to fill these positions. So the point being is you need to know these people, you need to be connected, and you need to stand out from the crowd. Oops, somehow that slide's already there. But the great way to do this is to narrow down your scope and then to network within these companies. So when we talk about narrowing your scope, I cannot tell you how many people I talk to on a daily basis that come to me and they say, I want a job in climate. I just want to work in climate. Like, I don't really care about what solutions I'm working on or where I'm working at. I really just want a job in climate. And on the surface, I think that approach sounds good. You're not putting yourself in a box, you're remaining flexible. However, if you are trying to get a job in the climate and you're networking with a founder who is incredibly passionate about electric vehicles, and you go up to him and or her and you say, "Yeah, I don't particularly care that much about electric vehicles. I just want a job in climate." Why would this founder want to continue conversations with you? They want someone who is incredibly passionate about their solution and can speak knowledgeably about it. Also, I hear that one of the most common pain points for job seekers looking to get a job in climate is that they don't have climate experience. They can't get a job in climate because they don't have climate experience. A great way to compensate for that lack of experience is to be knowledgeable about certain spaces. And it's really hard to be knowledgeable about all of climate. However, going back to electric vehicles, if you really dive deep into the EV landscape, you read a lot of research papers, you talk to a lot of people, you're really read up on those issues, you're going to be able to speak a lot more knowledgeably and be able to talk to those pain points and have good conversations with the people you are trying to network with. So, again, the key here is to narrow your scope. You're not putting yourself in a box, but you're having a really strong idea of where you want to go and you're understanding these issues at hand. The other piece to this is you also can figure out where your skills are transferable and where they're needed. We'll dive into this a little bit more, but the key with job searching and looking for a job in any startup landscape is figuring out where your skills are aligned. So again, if you are in, let's say you're in marketing and you're really passionate about nature-based solutions, you want to work for an early stage startup and you can't find any jobs, it's probably a good sign that your skills aren't needed in that space quite yet. Nature-based solutions is a really early stage climate vertical, and a lot of times they're looking to hire highly technical people and you may not be there yet. You may be needing to look at a later stage company or a more mature vertical. So again, the key here, narrow your scope. You're not putting yourself in a box. You're essentially diving deep and focusing on depth as opposed to focusing on breadth of climate solutions. So when I tell people this who are new to climate, a lot of times they get pretty overwhelmed of, I just learned what a climate solution was, and now I need to figure out which climate solutions I want to solely focus on. That's really hard when you're first introduced. So these are some great starting points if you are in that boat, if you're feeling just pretty overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. I always say it's a bit coincidental because a lot of times I talk to people who are like, "Oh, I know nothing about climate. This is so cool. I didn't know that I could be a sales professional working a climate job." And then they get introduced and it's like, "I'm overwhelmed by the amount of resources." So again, hopefully these resources here, great starting points, can help you kind of see through that noise and learn a little bit more about the space. Again, I won't go over this now. I'll share the slide deck with you so you can go back on your own time and poke through some of these resources. So once you've done that, once you've gone through those resources and you have an idea of where you want to be, I do want to actually call attention to the Project Drawdown Solutions Library, the third one here. Highly recommend checking that out. Project Drawdown, they have an entire library of hundreds of climate solutions. You can read through them, figure out which ones you're interested in. Once you've done that, and once you have a good idea of the solutions that you're interested in, this is where you need to figure out the need and the timing. What I was talking about earlier when I said the marketing professional in nature-based solutions. So once you've pinpointed those 3 climate solutions that you're interested in, you need to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a box, that there's actually opportunities for you in that space. So a great way to do this is to go to job boards. So say you're interested in nature-based solutions and you're in marketing and you want to work for a Series A stage company. Go to Climate Tech List, put in all those parameters, and click search. If nothing comes up, it probably means that you've gone too narrow. So then maybe you go back and say, okay, let's look at battery innovation. Battery innovation, Series B, marketing. You're probably going to see more jobs, and that means you are on the right track. Another key that goes into this is determining the funding stage of the company. So, as we talked about, the vast majority of climate companies are startups. So, they are funded by different organizations and they have different funding stages. So, very generally speaking, the earlier the funding stage of the company, the more likely that they are going to be hiring solely science and engineering roles. And then as they get more money and as they get into those later funding stages, that's when they'll likely bring on more business supporting roles like marketing, sales, product, and so on and so forth. So again, there's always exceptions to this, but a great rule of thumb to follow is if you're in a business supporting role, so marketing, sales, product, any of those types of roles, looking at the later funding stage type companies, you're probably going to see more opportunity. And vice versa. If you're in a highly technical field, earlier funding stages are likely hiring more people. So once you've done that, once you've decided what types of companies and what types of jobs and climate solutions you're going to be looking into, you need to figure out what your transferable skills are and how this will be applicable to these companies. So again, I know transferable skills can tend to be a bit of a buzzword, but essentially a transferable skill is a skill that can be used across a spectrum of roles. In essence, it means you're defining yourself by your skills and not your job titles. So when we're talking about switching industries, transferable skills can be quite multifaceted. So the first element of transferable skills is from job title to new job title. So marketing associate to product manager. However, when we're switching industries, transferable skills also need to be applicable to your old industry and your new industry. So for example, starting with the role type, some of these transferable skills from the role may be from marketing to product, maybe organization, analytics, technical knowledge, etc. However, again, when you're transitioning from industries, you also need to think of transferable skills from, say, healthcare to climate, and what are those skills overlaps. So as I talked about earlier, a lot of job seekers that I talk to, they say that they really are struggling to find a job in climate because they don't have climate experience. And that is where this really comes into play. The easiest way to transition your career to climate is to limit the amount of variables. So again, in a traditional sense, when we're thinking of transferable skills, people typically think of, okay, how can I go from product to marketing? However, when we're switching industries, we really need to focus on that latter transferable skills from healthcare to climate. And the path of least resistance to get there is to keep your job title the exact same. So say, for example, you were a SaaS B2B product manager at a growth stage healthcare company. The easiest way for you to get a job in climate is to look for SaaS B2B climate roles at a growth stage company. That way, the only thing that you're switching here is you're going from healthcare to climate, but all of your other skills remain the exact same. The graph on the bottom of the screen here is from our friend Mona Johnson. She owns a career coaching company called Mojo Career Coaching. She's incredible. I cannot recommend her more, but this is her graph on the bottom of the screen here outlines exactly what I just said. The easiest way to get a job in climate is to keep the same job title, but switch industries. And as you go right on this graph, the harder it's going to get. So the hardest way to get a job in climate is to get a different industry and a different role type. I put this in here because a lot of times when people want to switch jobs, it's because they're at a bit of a crossroads. And a lot of times it's just human nature of when you want to change something, you want to change everything. So you come to this job search and you throw everything up in the air and want to change everything, which is fine. Like if that's going to work for you, I say great and explore it. However, that's not going to work for a lot of people. And I strongly believe that that's the reason a lot of people have a hard time getting a job in climate is because they're not thinking of this. They're throwing everything up in the air, trying to change everything. So if that's you, can you go back to the same job title? Can you only reduce one variable, try to work your way into a climate job, and then grow from there? Your next job does not have to be your final destination. It can be a stepping stone. It can help you get climate experience, and then you can go from there. I'd say that's the key to remember here is the job search is full of stepping stones. It does not have to be your end destination, especially when you're trying to break into a new industry. So here's an example of someone who only reduced one variable. This person is a marketing analytics manager at an AI startup. They want to transition to climate. So they are looking for marketing and analytics roles at a green cement company. And some of the transferable skills that they can focus on is proficiency in B2B and B2C outreach, experience in a rapidly growing field, expertise in growth marketing and working in startups, taking something from inception to scale. Even though they didn't have a climate job at the AI company, they still were involved in the Green Employee Resource Group. So they're proving that they're invested. They can be a generalist. Worked at a startup, they had to wear a lot of hats. And then lastly, proficiency in disturbing the industry status quo. AI obviously is disrupting quite a bit, similar to green cement. It's going against a multi-billion-dollar industry. So they know how to navigate those kind of murky waters a lot of ways. Perfect. So after you've pinpointed those solutions, you figured out your transferable skills, you really have a strong idea of where you're going to go. The next step is to start networking within these spaces. So really important, you've already niched down. You've already figured out where your skills are transferable, where they're needed, and what you're interested in. So make sure when you're going about networking, you're sticking to those solutions. You're not going broad again. You're trying to remain niche to those areas. You're going to join the relevant Slack communities and groups. You're going to try to get to know some of the main players, understand the common pain points in this industry, and you're going to ask for referrals. When it comes time to apply to jobs, it's really important to have referrals and to have internal connections who can leverage for you. Super helpful, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So here is a networking tracking template that I put together. I will drop it in the chat right now. Oh, it's not going to work. Okay, I'll send it out later. But this is a networking tracking template. I know better than anyone that when you start talking to a lot of people, those conversations can really start to blur together. So make sure you're keeping track of who you're talking to, kind of how you're going about it, and some of those connections. I actually did just drop it in the chat. So it's a Notion template. You can duplicate it, have your own copy. This is a cool template because it will give you a reminder to check back in with people, make sure you're leveraging and maintaining these connections. So just a good resource for you to keep in your back pocket. This is one of my favorite talking points when I talk about networking. A lot of times people talk about networking as being lucky and being in the right place at the right time. And yeah, 100%. A lot of networking is being in the right place at the right time. But the key is you have to put yourself out there and put yourself in these places in order to be in the right place at the right time. And the theory behind this phenomenon that I just outlined is called planned happenstance theory. So planned is deciding what you want to do and building proactive strategies to get there. So narrowing your scope, you know what type of job you want, you know what climate sector you want to be in, and you know what funding stage company you want to work at. That's your plan. The happen is those unforeseen opportunities and chance occurrences. So you just happen to go to a carbon removal event because that's where you want to be, and you stay back for the networking portion, and you just happen to meet a hiring manager and you get a job. yeah, that is an unforeseen opportunity. However, if you didn't plan and you didn't account for that, you would never have been at that event. So, kind of connecting here, like, yes, you are setting yourself up for those happen events. And then the stance is the attitude that you're going to bring to this space. I meet a lot of job seekers who are really negative about getting a job because it's a hard market. It's really hard to stay optimistic when you've been getting ghosted and rejected quite a bit. However, if you were at that corporate and you're just feeling really negative and you didn't stay back and talk to people, you never would have had that chance to meet that hiring manager. So again, the plan happenstance is narrowing your scope, knowing where you want to be, having a plan, putting yourself out there, bringing an optimistic attitude, and then opportunities are going to come your way and it's going to work out for you. So again, this is really just the key of networking is yes, there's a lot of luck, but you set yourself up for this luck and it will work out in your favor. A great workflow here for networking is to send a connection request. So find those companies that you're interested in, the ones that you would like to work at. Find a person that you would like to work with. A big mistake that I see a lot is job seekers will find a really cool climate company. They'll go to their LinkedIn and try to connect with people, but they'll only send a connection request to the founder. That founder's probably getting inundated with application or with connection requests, and the likelihood of them getting back to you is pretty slim. However, if you're in product and you connect with another product manager, they're probably gonna have way more capacity to talk to you and they'll probably get back to you much quicker. So send a connection request with a simple note. Once they accept your connection request, send them a more in-depth message about why you want to talk to them. The key with this message is to make them feel like an expert. So, hi, just connected with you on LinkedIn, or just came across your LinkedIn profile. Your background is incredibly impressive. I've been diving really deep into battery innovation, and I can't think of anyone better to talk to than you. Your background at this company really speaks to so many of my interests. Do you have 20 minutes to spare? I'd love to ask you some questions and learn from your expertise. The key with this message again, make them feel good. If you paint them as an expert, they're going to feel far more inclined to talk to you than if you just sent them a message with 10 paragraphs on your background and, hey, can you talk? They don't care. You're not trying to like make them feel good or offer them anything. From there, have a bit of a back and forth conversation, ask them questions, share some resources, treat it like a human relationship as opposed to just a transaction. Then send some times over to try to get a call scheduled. Have that call. The key with networking conversations is if you initiate a call, it is on you to come prepared. Please do not ask someone to give you 20 minutes of their time and then go into that call and don't have any questions for them and expect them to lead the conversation. Make sure you've prepared, make sure you have questions, make sure you're showing that you have this deep knowledge of the space. You narrowed your scope, you pinpointed a few solutions so that you have the capacity to be knowledgeable about these solutions. So make sure you've done your homework and don't waste this person's time. After the call, please send a thank you note. If someone's giving you 20 minutes of their time, that's a lot for a busy person. So make sure you're appreciative of their time and then remember to stay in touch. This way, when a job is created, you already know them, you already have an internal player. And if there's no job, maybe they can network you into a job, maybe they can create a job for you. Just really important to treat these relationships as relationships and continue to maintain them because going back to that planned happenstance, you never know when this person could become a job opportunity for you. So when you're having this conversation, so when they respond and they say, sure, I'd love to talk, this is a great flow to follow for that networking conversation. So introduce yourself, make sure you have an elevator pitch of your objective, your why you care about these climate solutions. Really practice that. Have a concise elevator pitch. Ask thoughtful questions that you've planned in advance based on your research on them and the company and the sector describe your current situation. If you're looking for a job, they should know that you're looking for a job. Make sure you're making that clear. Offer to help them in any way. Again, you're having this conversation and you're focusing on relationships as opposed to transactions. So, how can you help them? Is there any way that you can help them and make sure you understand that? Ask them if they have any connections that they recommend you talk to based on this conversation. That way, they're curating your next connections for you. Thank them for their time, and then again, send that follow up email. We have talked about this quite a bit, but the key with networking, I'd say the most important part about networking is prioritizing relationships over transactions. This is why people always say, network before you need it, and then you can come back and rely. I understand that if you're job searching, it is pretty transactional. The reason you're networking is because you're looking for a job, but it's really important to not make that super clear. If you want someone to genuinely help you, you have to view it as a relationship as opposed to a transaction. A good analogy or an anecdote that I like to share during when I'm trying to convey this point is, say you're at a coffee shop and you just sit down next to someone and you just start talking to them about their day, and turn out that you have a lot of common connections with this person and you have a lot of similarities with them, and you're like, they make a really good friend. You get their phone number, you leave, and then the next step would probably be like, hey, it was great meeting you. I know you mentioned that you like to go hiking. Do you want to go hiking at some point? You continue to build that relationship. And then 6 months down the line, if you're going out of town and you need someone to walk your dog, you probably wouldn't feel too awkward saying, hey, would you mind checking in on my dog while I'm gone? They would say yes. As opposed to if you met this person at the coffee shop, you immediately leave, and before ever hanging out with them again, if you text them and say, hey, it was great meeting you at the coffee shop. I'm going out of town. Could you watch my dog? They'd probably be like, we just met. That's a little bit weird for you to ask such a big thing of me. The same thing goes for networking. If you just connected with someone and you send them a message of, hey, I'm looking for a job. It looks like you're hiring. Like, you want to talk? They'd probably be like, I don't even really know you. However, if you've networked with them, you've had shared resources, you've had a few back to back conversations, and you said, hey, I saw your company's hiring for a job. Like, I love to talk to you about why I think I'd be a good fit. It'd be far less of an ask and it'd be a little bit more seamless. So, again, relationships over transactions and doing it gracefully. We talked about this already too, but getting referrals are incredibly important. When you reflect back on the 650 applications, a lot of times these founders are inundated. They don't have time to go through all of those applications. However, if one of their trusted employees says, hey, yeah, I met Claudia last week, she was awesome, the founder's probably going to go back and look at Claudia's profile and give it another look and be far more likely to talk to Claudia as opposed to any of the other 649 applications that are in that pool. Some other reasons that getting referrals are super helpful is you understand the company's pain points. You've talked to someone at the company. You know what they're struggling with. So when you're in interviews, you can tailor your questions or your answers to those pain points and have really thought through interview answers. Also, as I just outlined, it increases your visibility. That founder's probably going to go back and give your profile another look. It also shows that you're taking the initiative. Founders really like to see people who are going the extra mile. They're really invested in their company. And if you're taking the time to try to network and get to know people at the company, it shows that you're invested in the job. And all of these things are going to make it more likely for you to get an offer. Awesome. There's also in-person and live events too to practice networking. As on that slide with resources, we had a lot of Slack groups on there. MCJ Collective was one of them. Work on Climate was one of them. They have in-person meetups. The how to find those channels is to create a Work on Climate account and then search in their channel database for hashtag meet dash city, so like meet dash New York, It'll pop up. You can join that Slack channel. You can see what people in New York are doing or whatever city you are in. So definitely do that. Try to put yourself out there. It's a great way to meet people and try to make some genuine connections. A lot of people tell me that networking is just very stressful for them. They get nervous doing it, so they aren't gonna show their best self, and it's really hard for them to make these genuine connections. There's a climate career coach out there named Lori McGinley. I'm not sure if y'all have met her, but she is incredible. I would highly recommend following her on LinkedIn because she's always sharing some incredible resources. But her piece of advice here is if networking is stressful for you, some great ways to counteract that is to make it part of your routine. We all know that the more you do something, the less stressful it becomes. So if every morning you send 3 LinkedIn connections, by the second week of doing that, it's going to feel a lot less stressful than it was the first week. Same part of that is practicing. The more you practice, the easier it's going to get. If you're prepared and you have a plan, you're going to be a little bit less stressed because you're going into this conversation knowing what you're going to ask. You're prepared. You're not just trying to wing it. Claudia, her last name is Lori McGinley. It's on the bottom of the screen here. It's McGinley. Also, talking about something that you care about. This one's super important too. If you've narrowed your scope and you're really passionate about nature-based solutions, you care about that stuff. So talking about it's going to be a lot easier than talking about something you don't care. So ask questions that you're genuinely interested in, and then that way you'll be more comfortable. Another really important thing is doing what makes you comfortable, making networking work for you. So if you know that going to in-person events and walking into a Climate Cities event in New York where you know no one is going to make you feel really anxious, you're right. You're probably not going to be conveying the best version of yourself. So don't do that. Rather, focus on those one-on-one connections where you don't feel as nervous. So try to get referrals, message people directly, offer to meet up with coffee. That still counts as networking. You don't have to be in the center of a big room to be networking. Sending a simple message counts as networking. We've already talked about this, but treating it as a relationship also makes networking far less stressful. If you're not going in with any expectations, then you can come out of it feeling less pressure than you would if you're like, I have to get a job from this conversation. Again, that funnels directly back into planned happenstance. Even if you don't have the expectations going into this, you're still setting yourself up for that luck that we kind of outlined. Going back to the doing what makes you comfortable and how you don't have to be in the center of the room to count as networking. If you would rather just send someone a simple message, that still counts as networking. Michael Melcher, he's a networking expert that we've collaborated with a few times, and he's really incredible. And his whole thing is your invisible network and how, again, you can send simple messages and that still counts as networking. He's coined these light messages as something called pings. So how can you like ping someone and how can you continue to maintain your networking conversations even if you're not having exhaustive hour-long meetings or going to conferences? So say you met someone, you had a coffee chat with them a few weeks back, and then they pop up on your LinkedIn feed, you see them making a post. If you just send them a quick message, that is going to be incredibly helpful. You are making this part of your routine. It's really low lift and you're being consistent because, as we've outlined, having a relationship with someone is far more important than having a transaction when it comes to networking. And in order to have a relationship, you have to stay in constant contact with them. You can't just have one 30-minute coffee chat and never talk to them again. However, it's really hard to dedicate 30 minutes every 2 weeks to have an exhaustive conversation. So again, that's really where pings come in. This is a few examples of pings. So, hi, when we spoke last, you mentioned that you're looking for productivity tools. I came across the Pomodoro timer and loved it. I thought you might want to give it a try. That takes 2 seconds to write, but still counts as networking. Hey, I remember that you said that you lived in LAX. I just drove through and wow, you live in a beautiful place. So simple, but you're still maintaining that relationship. Hey, I just read a blog post about this. Thought you might find it interesting. Sending that to 5 different people after you finish the blog post. Again, the key, make this routine, send a few of these. Promise it's going to be really helpful when you're ultimately trying to leverage this in the future. You have maintained those relationships. Perfect. So, tying it all together, how can you leverage networking to get a job in climate? First is to research and learn as much as you can. Then you're going to pinpoint 3 climate solutions and dive deep into them. You're going to start networking within those spaces. You're going to remain in constant contact with these people through simple messages like pings. You're going to prioritize your connections and your relationships over transactions. Then you're going to leverage those connections to try to get referrals, to follow up. You're going to pitch yourself. And then when you apply to jobs, you can leverage this incredible network that you've created and have an entire team of people who are on your side. Awesome. So if you learned something today, as I hinted at in the beginning of the course, I host a ton of events. 99.9% of my events are free. This is the one paid event that I host. It's going to be a 4-hour boot camp taught over 2 2-hour sessions with Tara.do. We're going to really dive deeper into like how to find these companies, how to go through your networking, and just really take everything we covered one step further. So if you're interested in learning more about this, just dropped a form in the chat. Feel free to fill that out and I will be in touch with some more information. Awesome. This is one final reminder that I know that getting a job, any job in this job market is hard, but getting a job in a new space like climate is exceptionally hard. So just want to say that you are not alone in that. I've been there. I know we all are in the same boat, but when you start prioritizing networking and you get to know people, you're going to feel a lot less isolated. The people in climate are so ready to help. I've never been in an industry that is so responsive and ready to help. As cliche as it may sound, we all know that the more people we have working on these solutions, the brighter our future is going to be. So you're needed. There's a space for you in this space, and just start putting yourself out there. And I promise you won't regret it. You're going to learn so much. And again, going back to that planned happenstance theory, when you set yourself up for these connections, they are going to lead to a job. You are in the right place. I'm here to be a resource. If you want to bounce ideas off of me, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Happy to have some conversations with all of you. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We have 10 minutes now, so want to open up the floor to any of you. If you have questions, happy to answer them. Feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can come off of mute and just ask them too. Looks like we have a few in the chat. Oh yeah, and Kazim dropped his LinkedIn profile. This session is all about networking, so definitely feel free to follow suit and connect with each other as well. Yes, Brian, I'll be sharing the deck out. I'm going to send an email later this afternoon with a link to the recording and the deck. So keep an eye out for that. Cool, cool, cool. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anyone have questions? Your time is now. Feel free to, again, drop them in the chat, raise your hand, or yeah. And if not, I wouldn't mind not talking either. So whatever works. I'll drop my LinkedIn in the chat now, so y'all can have that. And then follow suit like Kazim did. If any of y'all want to network with each other, definitely feel free to drop your LinkedIns in the chat and we can all connect with each other.
Hey, Natalie.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I couldn't get myself to raise my hand quick enough.
You're good.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, the networking tips were really helpful, so thank you for that. I am wondering if I am browsing a job board, or I find a job on LinkedIn that where maybe I don't have any connections or I haven't met anyone from that organization before, but I'm really, really interested in the job.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for like ways to make yourself stand out or connect with people once you like see that and want to apply immediately? Because there's not really time to build a relationship at that point. So I guess I'm wondering, like, do you have any tips for that?
Yes, and I'm actually gonna drop trying to find a YouTube video and I keep playing all these ads. I'm gonna drop this link to this YouTube video in the chat right now. I think this will be super helpful for you, Tiffany, and probably everyone in this call. This is an Ask Me Anything session that I did with his name is Cameron McDonald. He is a sales manager at Uplight, an energy company. And his whole tactics is exactly what you just outlined, is he would look for jobs that he wanted to apply to, and then instead of applying right off the bat, he would go to their LinkedIn, try to find connections, connect with them, try to get calls scheduled so that he could learn about the pain points. So he would just be pretty blunt, like maybe not as relationship focused of like, I'm looking for a job, but I really want to learn about you. Like, how did you get a job in this space? How did you end up at Uplight or how did you end up at this company? Kind of taking the tone that way. Then this person would tell them the pain points that as to why they're hiring this person, give them some insights into the company. And then Cam would say, "Would you mind introducing me to the hiring manager? I'd love to like have this conversation." That person would then send an email to the hiring manager introducing Cam, and he'd go into that conversation already having that background knowledge on the company and be able to really tailor his answers and really go about it. I'd say that yes, relationship networking is super important for the vast majority of things. However, if a company has a job posted, if they are actively hiring for a role, they want people to reach out. They're looking for the best person. So I would say that's not necessarily as transactional. Yes, maybe,
Mm.
but it's more so proving your worth. Like they're looking for someone. How can you prove that you're going to be the person for that job? But definitely recommend checking out that YouTube video I watched because I think Cam explains it in a really, really helpful way.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always been curious about that because it's like you kind of want to apply immediately so that you're not like, getting left behind with other people applying at the same time. But yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And there's different like lines of thought with this too. Some people do just apply, some people wait. Totally up to you. Cam will advocate to wait. I might actually just drop the application and then try to like, because there's ways to stand out post application too. Like they're usually viewed
Right.
on like a rolling basis. So like even if they already looked at your profile, they can still go back and relook at it too. Cool. Awesome. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but is it Tiziana?
Yeah, you said it right last time too.
Oh, sorry.
No, I said you got it. You got it right. No, so I'm actually curious about your experience because oh, sorry, I'm looking at my phone. I tried to put my hand down, but sorry, I can't multitask. But anyway, I'll just ask the question. Yeah, I'm curious about your experience because I have been in the climate field as a organizer, funny enough, at Sierra Club. Um, and I was wondering, how did you transition from being a grassroots organizer to what you're doing now? Because it's quite different.
Yeah.
And the transferable skills, like what like I just how did you do it? It's not that simple, to jump from, even
Yeah.
if you are in the climate field already, something
Yeah,
so different.
yeah. So I was in the Sierra Club and then I went to Greenpeace. So and then I went from Greenpeace to just a traditional technology company. I have a degree in marketing and communications and I did some like internships when I was in college with marketing and comms. So again, that first marketing job that I had was not climate related at all. And that kind of speaks to what I was saying about your next job doesn't have to be your final destination. I talk to a lot of like entry level people, which I know you're probably not. You do have that real world experience, and tell them if you're trying to get experience in a field. So if you want to be in, I don't know what it say, marketing or comms, it is okay to go get a marketing job or a comms job at a non climate company, get that experience. And then that's similar to what I did. I was able to apply my climate experience from my time in grassroots advocacy and my real world experience working at this technology company and end up where I am now of like I have both of these experiences, but I would say that the skills that are transferable between advocacy or grassroots work and the technology landscape would definitely be communication, like ability to like talk to people, convey complex concepts and be able to like really do that well. Like you're changing opinions and I would encourage you to look into like some of the more like disruptive spaces. Like I know I had green cement on there, but like green cement, they really need a lot of like advocacy and communications people because the construction industry, the cement industry is a huge industry that has a lot of money. And if you're trying to make it more green, you're going against huge players and you have to really be able to like speak to the public about it, speak to contractors, be able to get people to really convert and be on your side, and I would imagine that you have a lot of experience doing that with advocacy.
Yeah, yeah. And I enjoy that. I enjoy making noise. But thank you. That's awesome advice. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. We have a question in the chat that's from Claudia. I wouldn't consider myself very tech savvy. Are there careers in climate tech for people without that knack? Certainly. I would say that like a climate job. So when we think of like climate technologies, we think of everything we outlined at the beginning of the presentation. But a climate job is anyone who works at any of those spaces. So I work for a climate technology recruitment firm. I'm not technologically savvy, but I'm still in a climate job. Same idea for any of these companies. If you're working for an EV company and you're in sales, you probably need to understand the technology of it, but you're not actually building the electric vehicles, you're simply selling them. So really relying on whatever your skill set may be, Claudia, and applying that to the climate landscape. That would probably be the most helpful, I would say. Awesome. Thank you everybody for dropping your LinkedIn's in the chat. Super exciting to see people starting to network. Perfect. Alrighty. Well, any other final questions before we wrap up? Everyone feeling good? Hopefully feeling ready to start networking? Cool. Awesome. Well, again, I'll be sending out this recording and the slide deck later this afternoon. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And then, yeah, add me on LinkedIn. Love to stay connected. Good luck, everyone. Again, you're in the right space. And thank you for taking the time to come learn about climate jobs. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.